Hello everyone. Today in this video we're going to look at how writers use language in a text. So first up we're going to learn two things. We're going to be able to identify some language features in a text as well as write a paragraph on how a writer uses language in a text. So we're going to be looking at this particular question. Now this is from paper 2 of the AQA exam, and it tells us we only need to refer to source B from lines 18 to 25. And this particular text is about surfers, and we're going to look at an extract that the question refers to. And the question is, how does the writer use language to describe the surfers and the sea? And this question is worth 12 marks, so clearly the focus point is how the writer uses language. And this sentence and this question is to do with describing the surfers and the sea. So there's three things really in our answer that we want to focus on, and that is number one, we want to be able to write a clear explanation of the effect of the writer's language. We also want to be able to use clear quotes that support um, our ideas, and we also want to be able to use clear and accurate subject terms. So subject terms are things like the names for the language features, such as metaphor, simile, rhetorical question, as well as other terms such as verbs, adjectives, nouns, so names of the word classes as well. And if we're writing also about sentence structure, we might also mention the different sentence types if that's applicable, but only if that's appropriate for writing about. Okay, so we're going to look at this extract here. I'm going to read it to you. And this extract is from lines 18 to 25, and it goes something like this. So and they being the surfers, so they rowed in majestically, always just ahead of the breaker, carried shorewards by its mighty impulse at the rate of 40 miles an hour. As the more daring riders knelt and even stood on their surfboards, waving their arms and uttering exultant cries, they were always apparently on the verge of engulfment by the fierce breaker whose towering white crest was ever above and just behind them. But just as one expected to see them dashed to pieces, they either waded quietly ashore or slided off their boards, dived under the surf, and were next seen far out at sea, as a number of heads bobbing about like corks in smooth water, preparing for fresh exploits. Okay, so we obviously want to think about how does the writer describe the surfers and the sea. So we've got two different things we're looking at. We're looking for the surfers and we're looking for the sea. Now, because I want you to have a go at this and to do a task, I'm not going to pick out all the language features here, but instead I'm going to zoom in on one of them and talk about that one and think about how we could write about that and then give you some tips about how you can approach this so that you can write your own paragraph based on other language features that you spot. So what I would like to zoom in is this word here, majestically. So this is, of course, the first thing we want to do is to pick out words and phrases that describe the surface of the sea. Okay, so let's imagine I have this text in front of me. I highlight this word majestically and I think, okay, I want to write about this word. The first thing I want to think about, okay, is this talking about the surface or is it talking about the sea? Well, if we go back just a few words here, we say, so they rode in majestically. Okay, so it's talking about the surfers and it's describing how they rode in. So this word here is a verb, and this word ends in ly, and this is describing the verb. So therefore, this is an adverb. And that's important because going back to what we said before, we want to use correct subject terms. Okay, so this is an adverb, majestically, and one of the things we might want to do is to think about what does the word mean when we have, when we pick out certain words, what do they mean, and what do we associate with that word as well? So if something's majestic, it's usually quite magical, something quite magical and special about it. And we usually associate the word majestic or majestically with royalty, with kings, with queens, with almost being masters of something, very powerful, commanding, um, having a spell over something, having control over something. So it's very, very much like royalty. So you pull all these ideas together, and we see that there's this idea that these surfers almost appear like kings or riding in, riding in on the waves, appearing like kings, appearing magical, appearing like royalty, as if they have command and power over the ocean and over the sea, just as surfers, really that's what it's about. When people are surfing, they're trying to control the sea. So here, by using this adverb, it's suggesting that these surfers are almost like royalty, that they have command over the sea. And if I was writing, I would say something a little bit like that. And I would always start off by saying the writer uses the adverb majestically to describe how the riders or how the surfers rode in. And then I would talk about the effect, which is that it suggests that the surfers are almost like royalty commanding the sea. And so there I'm saying something a little bit more about the language feature. Of course, in this case, it's a word class. So that's essentially what you want to do, and you want to pick about 3 of them. And if you pick out 3 of them in this text, you'll have a choice. Um, usually you can pick, if you can pick out more, you can pick out like 5, then you can, you have a choice then, and you might not be able to write about all 5 of them, because certainly in an exam situation, you don't have a lot of time to write about 5 of them. But here, you can, if you pick out 3, you can write about at least 2 to 3 of them. Okay. So just looking at some tips then. So obviously I want you to have a go at writing an answer, a response to this question, which is how does a writer in this passage, in this text, use language to describe the surface and the sea? And of course you want to read the whole text, don't just read the extract, because always think that this extract here comes from a bigger text itself. So you want to obviously a bigger extract, which is you want to read it within the context. It's going to help you understand it a lot more. So here's my 3 tips then when you're writing this answer. The first tip is to think about the connotations of words in the context of the text. So you want to think about associations. Every word that we use, or that a writer uses, is really done on purpose, and it's a great way to think about that. Whenever you have a text and you're trying to analyze it, you want to think that the writer has deliberately and purposefully used every word in the text for an effect. Now, is that true? Probably not, but it's going to help you a lot. It's going to go a long way for you to think in that manner, because now you play a detective and you're trying to pick apart and analyze why has the writer decided to use that word in that text. And we go back. This adverb majestically here is done on purpose. It's trying to make the surfers appear like royalty, like kings commanding the sea. And that's very, very clear. That is purposefully done there. That is not an accident. And likewise, all the other words in this passage is not an accident. And so it's for you to try to pick apart and find out, why has a writer perhaps used this word? What impression are they trying to give us of the surfers or the sea? Finally, not finally, secondly, my another tip is to highlight the words and phrases that relate to the question rather than look for language features itself. So a lot of students tend to look for language features. They tend to look for similes and rhetorical questions first and foremost, where are the language features? But that isn't a great way to do it, because you might be looking for something that just isn't there, and it's not a productive use of time. Instead, you should just look at the question and think, okay, this is about language to describe the surface and the sea. So you're looking for anything that makes sense to you, and that's important, it makes sense to you, that describe the surface and the sea. It's a lot easier to highlight and to find quotes in that way, and then it's a lot easier to write about. Once you've got your quotes, you then can look for language features and look for which language features are used. If there's no language feature, if there's no simile, no metaphor, nothing like that, then look for adverbs, nouns, adjectives that are important in that quote. And finally, when you write a response to a question like this, is you want to use a mixture of language features and techniques. So if you find a simile, or if you, let's say, for example, you're writing about similes and you find multiple similes, you don't really want to just write about similes, because then you're just quite limited in the sense that you're only writing about similes and you're not writing about anything else. And my final tip that isn't on the screen, but I would say when you're writing about this, try to just stick to language. Don't write about sentence types, structure, or anything like that. Just stick to language for this particular question in paper 2. So devote it just to language itself, not about sentence structure or sentence length. Um, focus entirely on language. Okay, I hope that was useful, and I would like you to have a go at answering this question and see if you can find certain language features used in this text, and go back after you've written your paragraph or two and ask yourself, have you explained the effect of the writer's language clearly? Have you used clear quotes that support your ideas? And have you used accurate use of subject terms? All right, until next time, thank you.